was seen by civilians, pilots, generals, and the unerring eye of Air Force radar. Reports ricocheted from the Shah to President Ford and back again. The film that you're watching recreates the day's events with the actual military personnel who witnessed the most compelling UFO encounter sightings has ever investigated.
4 other objects with different shapes separated from the main one at different times during this close encounter. Whenever they were close to me, my weapons were jammed and my radio communications were garbled. One of the objects headed toward me. I thought it was a missile. I tried to launch a heat-seeker missile to it, but my missile panel went out. Another followed me when I was descending on the way back.
September 19th, 1976. An F-4 Phantom roars into the night, not toward an enemy plane, but an object beyond anything in its threat database. The jet was in hot pursuit until electronic communication and weapon systems on the jet would fail. Panicked crews on the ground tried to reach the jet. What happened that night over the capital of Iran is a story straight out of Hollywood, except it has the proof to back it up. The night began quietly. Around midnight, Mehrabad Control Tower in Tehran, Iran, got 4 calls in rapid succession. Observers in different districts reported a strange glowing object splitting in two, merging and hovering. Some callers reported seeing a helicopter with a bright light, but according to declassified documents, no helicopters were in flight that night. Tower radar was offline for maintenance. No aircraft were scheduled at all. The tower would look in the direction of the reports. All of a sudden, they saw it. According to Tower Shift Supervisor Hossein Perozi, quote, "Suddenly I saw it. It was rectangular in shape, probably 7 to 8 meters long and about 2 meters wide. From later observations I made, I would say it was probably cylindrical. The 2 ends were pulsating with a whitish blue color. Around the midsection of the cylinder was this light red light that kept going around in a circle. I was amazed. I didn't know what to think. There definitely was a very strange object there in the sky right over Tehran." With the nervousness at the tower building, they would radio over to General Nader Yousefi at Cherokee Air Force Base. The object could reportedly be seen by up to 70 miles away due to how bright it was. Yousefi and others, upon seeing the UFO hovering over Tehran, decided to scramble a jet to intercept immediately. The jet was piloted by Yadi Naziri, who was closing in on the object going about Mach 2, which is somewhere along the lines of 1,522 miles per hour. Once Naziri got within about 25 nautical miles of this object, both weapon systems and comm systems went offline, including radar. Naziri would turn around. Once he was out of range, all communication systems happened to come back online. Was this because of the range, or because he was no longer deemed a threat? Naziri would return to Cherokee Air Force Base. Startling, but this is just the opening act. After the first attempt left operators stunned, at 1:40 a.m., a second F-4 was launched. This time Major Pervez Javari was at the controls, with Lieutenant Jalal Damirian as a backseat weapons officer. Jafari would lock radar at about 25 to 27 nautical miles away from the object. The size of the radar return was comparable to that of a Boeing 707 tanker. However, the object looked nothing like a Boeing 707 according to the witnesses.
First plane followed it, and when I took off, he said he can't reach it, even with the over the speed of sound. And I told him to come back. On the way back, when he was coming, again we saw it on the middle of both of us.
That was just radar confirmation of the size. The visual size is harder to determine because of its intense brightness. The lights were flashing, almost like a strobe light. Looked like it was a rectangular pattern of lights, alternating between colors of blue, green, red, and orange. Apparently, the sequence of the lights was so fast that all the colors could be seen at once. When Jafari got inside of 25 nautical miles, things would escalate. A small, bright object detached from the main craft and sped under control toward the F-4. Jafari assumed it was hostile. He pressed the trigger for an AIM-9 Sidewinder missile.
When I looked to my missile panel to see if the missile is selected or not, I saw all of the instruments are fluctuating and plus lots of statics in the radio hearing, and there was no lights inside the missile panel. So I knew there's no use for none of these things.
Almost like the movie, the second he pushes the controls to fire the weapons, navigation, and radio systems all immediately went offline. With the smaller UFO still darting towards the jet, Jafari was forced to act. He executed a negative G dive maneuver to escape proximity of the smaller UFO. Once he had escaped pursuit, the smaller craft actually turned around and headed back towards the mothership, for lack of a better term. Startlingly, the smaller craft seemed to execute a controlled docking maneuver and rejoined with the larger craft.
4 other objects with different shapes separated from the main one at different times during this close encounter. Whenever they were close to me, my weapons were jammed and my radio communications were garbled. One of the objects headed toward me. I thought it was a missile. I tried to launch a heat-seeker missile to it, but my missile panel went out. Another followed me when I was descending on the way back.
All of a sudden, as Jafari gained distance away from the larger craft, another object broke off the mothership. It darted directly towards the ground at an incredible speed. Amazingly, ground crew could see the bright object slow down to actually land in a slightly different area west of Tehran known as Karaj. Jafari would circle the landing spot for a return trip, being as how he was low on fuel. As the jet was approaching the Mehrabad airport, the event wasn't over. Reportedly, whenever the jet would pass through a magnetic bearing of 150 degrees from Mehrabad airport, the jet's radio and communication system would flicker on and off. Not only that, the navigation system would show fluctuations as well. As the jet neared the landing strip, the crew would actually see a giant cylindrical-shaped object, but it didn't move to intercept their approach. Ground crews confirmed that there were no scheduled flights in the area still. The cylindrical object would then zoom off behind the nearest mountain. 1 year later, in 1977, Lieutenant General Azerbaijan, who was Deputy Commander-in-Chief of Operations of the Imperial Iranian Air Force, confirmed in an interview that strong electromagnetic effect experienced by the two F-4s was legitimate. Quote, "That is true. They both were scrambled and they locked on the target and they received a very strong jamming. And then they almost lost every avionics system they had on the airplane. The jets couldn't fire their missiles because they had very strong jamming. This technology it was using for jamming was something we haven't had before and we don't have it still. It doesn't exist because it was a very wide band and could jam different bands, different frequencies at the same time. It's very unusual." End quote. The next morning, the hunt for the smaller UFO that had darted towards the ground would begin.
One of the separated objects landed in an open area radiating a high bright light in which the sands on the ground were visible. We could hear emergency squash at all the way, which was reported by other airliners flying at the time and continued for another couple of days. During my interview at headquarters, after the incident, the American Lieutenant Colonel Alan Moy took notes, but after it was over, I could not find him to talk with.
Both Jafari and Damarian would be flown by helicopter to the area. No physical traces were found in the immediate area. However, a quote, beeper signal, end quote, was discovered. They would be flown towards a house in the distance. The people who lived in the house would talk about an extremely bright light, as bright as lightning, along with a loud noise. Their timeline of the events perfectly lined up with when the jets were chasing the UFO. Soil samples were taken from the area, and I'll give you one guess on if those results were made public or not. The United States was actually a key ally with Iran at this time. The US was told about this event. Saying that they took it seriously would be an understatement. This message was generated by Lieutenant Colonel Olin Moy of the US Military Advisory Group directly after the incident. We can see it summarizes the details of this event, confirming electronic interference and more. Let's briefly go over the list of agencies that received this message. It includes Secretary of State, CIA, the White House, the Air Force and Army Chiefs of Staff, the Chief of Naval Operations, the Defense Intelligence Agency, the Commander-in-Chief of Naval Forces in the Middle East, Commander-in-Chief of Air Force in Europe, European Defense Air Command, and the Commander-in-Chief of Forces in Europe. I mean, that, as we can agree here, is an impressive list. Both the NSA and DIA have reports on the incident, which again summarize the event and take it serious. Let's listen to the NSA. While it is hard to read at the bottom here, it does read, the credibility of many witnesses was high. An Air Force general, qualified air crews, and experienced tower operators. Visual sightings confirmed by radar. Similar electromagnetic effects were reported by 3 separate aircraft. There were physiological effects on some crew members. For example, loss of night vision due to the brightness of the object. Lastly, an inordinate amount of maneuverability was displayed by the UFOs. Doesn't sound like Venus or balloons to me. You'll notice this report said similar electromagnetic effects were reported by 3 separate aircraft. A civilian airliner, which was out of the area that had been reported to have no flights approaching, was actually approaching Mehrabad Airport. The pilot of that flight would also report communications loss in specific areas. We also have more modern interviews with people who witnessed this event. Notably, Jafari spoke during the 2007 National Press Club event. This event would feature multiple credible speakers from different UFO incidents over the years, including the infamous and future undeniable list member Rendlesham Forest incident. In the end, no official story is given explaining these events from either Iran or the US. It can be difficult to get intelligence reports from Iran at the time, but from the US perspective, we had just come out of the Project Blue Book era. Stigma facing UFO studies was high at this time. The real question is, how deep did the US take this study in secret? This is yet another case where the US government takes the role of the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain. While no official explanation was given, some of the popular debunk theories include misidentifying a planet as the object or objects. To me, this one just sounds absurd. They captured these objects on radar, multiple ground and in-flight sightings, weapons malfunctions, etc. Just doesn't seem that likely to me. We could combine the misidentifying a planet theory, or a star even, with the fact that random coincidence can happen with machine failures. So we've had civilians, flight, and ground crews all observing these objects that are somehow misidentified as planets or stars, jets chasing after them, and when they happen to get close, that is when the technology fails in both instances. I also find that extremely unlikely. The final theory we can look at is secret tech theory. This one is possible, but from the reported maneuvers and jamming capabilities, it would seem that either the US or the Soviets would have the ability to break the laws of physics back in 1976. If this is the case, with what technology did we achieve this breakthrough, I wonder? To quickly review, we have multiple data modes, including radar, visual, voice, and electronic interference. electromagnetic effects across both military jets and one civilian flight in the same area, credible military sightings along with ground reports from multiple sources, all leading to documentation that the US government took this event very seriously and no official explanation given. This whole case sounds like a movie to me. With previous undeniable cases, I covered the Washington, D.C. UFO flap and the Lonnie Zamora incident. Another example of these cases being different, yet the phenomenon needing to be taken seriously. I've covered a mass sighting that lasted multiple weekends with reliable witnesses and radar data, a single witness but with physical evidence, and now an instance of an actual multi-object dogfight. There are many other undeniable cases we will take a look at moving forward. If you enjoyed this breakdown, please like, subscribe, and let me know what you think. Did I miss anything with this case? Are there any suggestions for what you want me to cover in the future? This is Truth in Tinfoil. Catch you next time.